Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the Swiss College Football Week 2. Week 1 went solid, plus 1.50 units. Wasn't a monster week, but you know what? Green is green. In this one, I'm talking Texas A&M on the road to play the Canes in Miami. Line opened up Miami's plus 7.5, but it reopened at 5. We'll get to that. Total opens up at 47.5.
Welcome to the Swiss. The Swiss. Hey, get the Swiss.
So like I said, this line actually opened at 7.5, but after week 1's games ended, it reopened at Miami plus 5. Early public definitely was leading Texas A&M, but on Tuesday we saw a decent amount of sharp action coming on Miami, and this line's now down to Miami plus 4.5 on most books. So these two teams had weirdly similar 2022 seasons. Both had super high expectations and both fell flat on their faces, but expectations are super high again for both programs this year. Both teams bring back a solid amount of production, more so Texas A&M. They're rated 7th in the entire country, returning an estimated 80% of their production from last season. So let's start with the Aggies, and as you probably know, they started the season preseason ranked number 6 and finished 5-7. Dead last in the SEC West. It was their first losing season since 2009. There's a silver lining here, though. First of all, Texas A&M lost 5 one-possession games last year. They were quite literally 2 yards away from beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa. They beat LSU on rivalry weekend. To be fair, LSU had already clinched a spot in the SEC championship game at that point, but still, huge win. The point I'm making is Texas A&M's season wasn't nearly as bad as the record indicates. They were 5-7, but they could have very easily been 8-4 last year. Their main issue was just a lack of offensive production. Texas A&M ranked bottom 40 in points per game and yards per game, sitting just 70th, according to Beta Rank, in overall offense. To be fair, they had injury issues, and they just had a carousel at the quarterback position. I mean, it was just a coin flip who was going to play week in and week out. Haynes King was the starter for a couple weeks to start the season. Then Max Johnson got the job for 2 or 3 weeks. Then it was Haynes King again. Then freshman Connor Wigman got a start. Then they went back to Haynes King for a start. Then finally, freshman Connor Wigman started the last 3 games. But the thing is, sure, you can use those excuses for the A&M offense. You can blame it on the injuries. You can blame it on the inconsistency at the quarterback position. But the truth is, this offense has been in a downward spiral for 3 years now. 2021 was down from 2020, and 2022 was down from 2021. So what does Jimbo Fisher do? He makes a move. He gets rid of the OC Dickey, brings in Bobby Petrino. This is a name I haven't heard in a while. You probably know who that is, but in case you don't, he's most notable for he had 2 separate tenures at Louisville. He's been the head coach at Missouri State the last few years in FCS school. We have seen him build several successful offenses in the FBS. Problem is, it's been a little while. The last time he was successful in the FBS was coaching the Lamar Jackson Louisville team in 2017. Now, some people's opinion who I trust are really big on this hire. I know Phil Steele has Texas A&M projected to average a full 7 points more per game this season. So some people that I trust really like the hire. And the first game of this experiment went extremely well. They beat New Mexico 52-10. Connor Wigman was 18 of 23, 236 yards, 5 passing touchdowns, no picks. Now, New Mexico certainly isn't a powerhouse. They were just 98th in effective pass last year, but they are an FBS program, so A&M deserves some credit for it. It was Texas A&M's highest scoring game since 2021. The problem is, it's not just the Texas A&M offense that has a question mark next to it. Mike Elko was the DC here back in 2021. They had the 5th ranked defense in the entire country. He leaves and takes the head coaching job over at Duke, as you know. And the Aggies defense dropped off a bit in production last season. They were still elite against the pass, so they didn't fall off against the pass. 2nd in yards per game, 6th in yards per attempt, 20th in average passer rating allowed, 4th in effective pass. So the A&M pass defense was still there, but the run defense absolutely fell off a cliff last year. Texas A&M in 2021 was 25th in yards per carry allowed and 30th in rushing yards per game allowed. In 2022, they dropped to 107th and 124th. This team couldn't stop the run to save their lives last year. Now for the good news, Texas A&M's defense does return 10 starters with a full season of experience under defensive coordinator DJ Durkin. I know New Mexico doesn't have a scary rushing attack, but A&M held the Lobos to just 2.8 yards per carry last week. I don't want to sit here and say the Aggies defense is back, but it's looking good. Now let's flip things over to the other side. Miami, as you've heard, was an absolute disaster last year in Cristobal's first season as head coach. They missed a bowl game for the first time since 2006. You can blame it on OC Josh Gaddis not properly using Tyler Van Dyke. Maybe Van Dyke wasn't 100%. He was dealing with that shoulder injury. Who knows? But Gaddis is gone now. He's the OC over at Maryland. They bring in Shannon Dawson from Houston, and we saw what Clayton Tune was doing in this guy's system over at Houston. In Clayton Tune's last 2 seasons there, he threw for 7,600 yards and 70 touchdowns. And keep in mind, for those of you who wrote Tyler Van Dyke off last year, Miami ranked just 106th in rush yards per game, 110th in yards per carry, just the 93rd highest rated rushing attack in the FBS. It's not the easiest situation for a sophomore quarterback to be in. You have no run support at all, and your star left tackle, Zion Nelson, goes down for the season in week 3. So let's cut Tyler Van Dyke a little bit of slack for last year. There's good news for the Canes on the horizon, though. They returned 9 offensive starters from last year's team, and in week 1, we saw them bully the Red Hawks run defense for 250 yards and 6.9 yards per carry. Yeah, the Miami of Ohio run defense was bottom 30 last year, but it was exactly what Hurricanes fans needed to see. On the other side of the ball, defensively, I mean, it's been a few years since Miami was a threat. It's been 3 years since they were a top 40 defense. 2018 and 2019 were great defensive years for the Canes, but it's pretty much been downhill since. And in my opinion, it's still up in the air as far as Miami's defense goes this year. Lance Guidry, brand new defensive coordinator. They did bring back a ton of production, 6 returning starters, including probably the best safety duo in college football, 4 new starters through the portal. I mean, on paper, it should be a good defense on paper. And it certainly looked that way in week 1, allowing just 3 points to Miami of Ohio, 215 total yards. That's it. 51 yards rushing on just 2 yards per carry. And the Red Hawks offense aren't scrubs either. They have a decent quarterback in Brett Gabbert. That was defensive domination by Miami. Real quick, let's run through some trends. Pretty negative on both sides here. Texas A&M 1-3 against the spread as road favorites last year. 1-3 against the spread in their non-conference games last year. Here's a positive one. Jimbo Fisher is 8-1 straight up and 5-4 against the spread in his last 9 games against Miami Hurricanes. On Miami side, pretty much all negative here. 1-6 against the spread at home last season. 6-13 against the spread at home since 2020. 2-6 against the spread in their last 8 non-conference games, and 0-2 against the spread as home underdogs last year. As far as what I'm personally doing in this game, I think Miami's going to be able to run the ball a little bit on A&M, and the Aggies' run defense is probably going to be better than it was last year, but not good enough to go on the road in Miami and shut down their run game on the home field. It looked great last week. If Tyler Van Dyke doesn't try to do too much and play off the run game, I think the Canes can win this game. So as far as what I'm betting, I'm definitely taking the points here. I'm going to take the Miami plus 4.5. If you want my top bets, parlay of the day, if you want to join the Discord, if you want to get in on the NFL against the spread contest, head over to KyleKirms.com for more information on that. College football week 2, ton of games on the board, ton of value on the board. Remember to bet responsibly, and I'll talk to you on Twitter.